Good morning. So today I'm going to talk about how having a heavenly mindset can help us to walk through trials well. So Jesus has said we will not escape trouble in this world, and a trial can be described as anything that will threaten our faith in Christ, anything that makes us feel like giving up. It could be a physical illness, a loss of a loved one, a difficult marriage, financial difficulties. It can be anything that makes, and any burden that we carry. It could be a long to-do list that make us feel so weary that we feel like giving up. And James has something to say to us about it. I'm going to read to you from James 1, verse 12. He says, "Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life, which God has promised to those who love him." So God has called us to stand. And trials often make us feel so weary, we just actually feel like giving up, And we could think, but what would motivate me to not give up? And you notice he talks about a crown of life. And that crown, that word crown comes from the Greek word, which means a badge of royalty, a prize in the public games, a symbol of honor. So if we have a longer than 70 to 80-year-old mindset where we look ahead to that crown of life that Jesus offers us, we will dig into the Lord for strength to stand. So, the next verse says, in verse 13, it says, "When tempted, no one should say, 'God is tempting me.' For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed." So even just the word steadfast means to stay under. We as children and servants of God are called to stay under his lordship, to voluntarily submit to his ways. And so in verse 13, when it's talking about being tempted, it's by our own desires, like our desires for comfort, our desires for ease, for the pleasures of this life, And the devil tempts us by those, and we can be drawn away into trading the inheritance of God for things that last only for this life. I even have this wonderful friend who, many years ago, she just said that all of her friends were getting married off, that, they were settling down, and she was one of the only ones who was sitting waiting for a husband. And an ex-boyfriend of hers who wasn't a Christian was showing interest in her and pursuing her, and how the one day she came home from a date and she lay on her couch and she just cried and she said, "God, I know this is not right. And so I choose, if I have to really give up my dream of ever getting married, I will do it to serve you, because I know this is not what you want." And but she did that because she knew it was looking ahead to the crown of life that she knew that Jesus promises. And I have other friends who are still waiting. And if they do not receive the reward in this life, the crown of life is certain on the other side, That it can also apply to someone in a difficult marriage who thinks, the world is selling the idea of, if this isn't enjoyable, if this is not meeting my needs, why should I have to put up with this, What causes us to search out the Lord for strength? Because there is grace to be found for every circumstance of life. It's because I look ahead to the crown of life, where God says he doesn't miss any moment when we choose him, when we choose to forgive again, when we choose to love instead of manipulate, when we choose to serve even when it's not appreciated. And I've even met people who used to love others well in church life, who used to be community leaders, who used to serve, and they're now just purely living for themselves. And they say, "Well, I gave hours to people," and they still did their own thing anyway. It's too costly. It's too hard. And I want to say, but do you know that in Matthew 25, Jesus says, every time you visited the sick, or those who are in prison, or loved people, you did it to me. That it was Jesus sitting on the other couch when you sat for hours and listened to people's pain, or loved them. And it says in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 58, it says, "Therefore, my beloved brothers, be steadfast, immovable, always abounding in the work of the Lord, knowing that in the Lord your labor is not in vain." So let's stand, let's stay under let's voluntarily submit to the ways of the Lord, because this life is only 70 to 80 years, and that crown of life is waiting for us in eternity.